Well, welcome back. Let's talk about some water problems in Johannesburg now. Ongoing water supply disruptions in some parts of Gauteng have caused a health and safety risk for affected residents and some of the province's healthcare facilities, including the Hani Baragwanath Academic Hospital, Helen Joseph Hospital and the Rahima Moosa Mother and Child Hospital. Patients have had to be transferred to other hospitals with theatre operations having to be performed at sister hospitals. And this comes after Rand Water experienced ongoing power supply failures that affected water pumping capacity at its Eikenhof Booster Pumping Station. And to get an update on this water supply situation, we're joined by Eddie Singo, who's Rand Water's Executive Manager for the Zuikerbosch Plant. And thanks so much for joining us this morning, Eddie, and being with us here on Morning Live.
Good morning to you, Sakina, and good morning to the viewers.
So, Eddie, let's just start with how the problem came about, because this is not the first time that we have experienced water problems in the Gauteng area. But what was the cause of this latest problem?
Look, the latest problem, as we had explained, was the failure of transformers, two transformers. I think in short, instead of you repeating the whole thing, two transformers that supply the Eikenhof Pumping Station failed, one on the 29th and the other on the 30th. But fortunately, on the 30th, late at 8:05, both of them were then brought back and energized.
So with regard to these sort of power interruptions, power failures, and the attendant problems that it causes for water supply, what are the contingency plans that you have in place, and what can actually be done from your side as Rand Water to mitigate some of these problems?
I think Rand Water from inception, I think with the design of the system, these are things that were anticipated. If you look at the time it took for consumers to realize that we've got a problem, it was way beyond 12 hours, and in other areas even longer. So what Rand Water has done in the design of the system, we built reservoirs right across the supply area of Rand Water. We've got all sorts of different sizes of reservoirs, right up to what we call Klepre-Vilsbeck, which is our biggest reservoir. That's the first thing that Rand Water did to ensure that at least we buy time at times when we lose electricity capacity. Because the truth of the matter is that these are engineering equipments. From time to time they will fail, and therefore that was built in. The second thing that Rand Water then did was to really engage with our electricity suppliers, knowing that we are an energy intensive organization. We then engaged with them. If you look at periods when there are load sheddings, our primary and secondary plants are never load shed, and touch wood, they are never load shed. Everybody else would be load shed, but the treatment plants and the pumping station, for obvious reasons that water is life and we can't do without water. We then, so that is settled between ourselves and the suppliers. The third thing that we then did on the tertiary plants, we've installed standby generators, because those are small. Those you can be able to get generators installed there, of course, at a very high cost. We've always spoken about the cost of diesel in terms of running generators, but for those small ones, we're able to do that. For our secondary ones, we've got generators. It's a project that is unfolding at the moment. Generators have been delivered. All that is being done now is connecting them up. But I want to also indicate that with the secondary plants, the magnitude of those plants would not necessarily allow us to be able to run the entire plant. So would be able to run possibly one pump or two pumps just to keep the system running. So there is a lot that is being done. But between ourselves and the suppliers, we also are holding them to account in as far as statutory maintenance that is supposed to happen. We do not just believe in what they are saying. We want to see that. And yesterday I went and looked at the maintenance records of the two transformers, and indeed that work is being done.
So just again to explain to our viewers how exactly this problem unfolded, because you had the two transformers, as you say, that blew up, but people want to understand why it is that they don't have water. So how does that whole process work?
All right. And I'm glad that you're asking that question, because too often people don't understand the relationship between electricity and water. So you would know that most of the purification plants in the world are built close to rivers, and their cities are also close to those rivers. So for water to be moved from the treatment plants to the cities in many other cities it is much more easier. However, in South Africa, our cities are built far away from the rivers, following the golds and platinums right up to Rustenburg. Meaning, from Vereeniging and Zuikerbosch, we then have to pump water, and from there to City of Joburg, to Mirafong, to Rustenburg. And those pumps are electrical pumps. And for them to operate, we need Eskom in the case of Zuikerbosch, we need Emfuleni in the case of Vereeniging, we need City Power in the case of Eikenhof. So in the event that we lose power, then it means we lose the pumping capacity. And then consumers will then be using water directly from the reservoirs, nothing going into the reservoirs. So that is that relationship. Without electricity, unfortunately, we are challenged if we run out of capacity in our reservoirs. And hence, we run our reservoirs at 85 to 90% capacity, just so that when things of this nature occur, we still have enough time. Now, the transformers, as I said, electrical equipment, there are a multitude of reasons why they would fail. It could be something that went in, it could be carbon dust that is in, it could be cities that are failing. So there is a multitude of those, and this is not unique to these ones. They happen every now and then. But at least I think one of the things that gives us comfort is that we are able to see that there is maintenance that is being done there.
So, Eddie, at this stage, people want to know, they've been without water for several days now, and some healthcare facilities also adversely affected by the lack of water. When can people expect water to be restored?
From yesterday morning, as we indicated earlier in the morning, that your low-lying areas should be getting water. We are confident that all our low-lying areas have got water. Late in the afternoon, when we did our inspections, we looked at reservoirs that are high. In particular, the city Joburg Waters reservoir has him was also gaining the water levels. So, which means areas around those places should also be, by yesterday evening, should be getting water. The hospitals should also be getting water, but we also have an agreement between ourselves and the authorities that in the event that there is a challenge, we will make sure that we provide tankers, which is not ideal, but I think at least we should not have a hospital that does not have water at all. But as we speak now, I am confident that most of the areas should be having water safely, 90% of the areas. However, I think it is important that consumers check with their relevant municipalities as to what the problem is. It could be other things that are no longer related to the situation that we experienced on Saturday and Sunday.
So from your side as Rand Water, you the bulk supplier, and from your end, you saying everything is done, the water has been pumped, and you're confident that all the low-lying areas have water. The higher-lying areas, which would those be? And also, you know, just to reiterate, you say maybe if places don't have water by now, they need to check now with the local authorities. But which are the high-lying areas?
There are two areas really that I can think of that are very high. Your Hest Hill and Brixton. Those areas are situated at higher levels. So those are the areas that I believe should be checking with the municipalities in terms of what is happening. I must also indicate that as Rand Water, we are not then pulling back and saying we are done with our space and therefore it is their own thing. We keep on engaging with them. We are with them in terms of fault finding if there's anything that needs to be done there. So there is work that we are doing with them. So those two areas really are the ones that so far we have been a little bit concerned about because of the topography.
Just speaking of the reservoirs, you mentioned reservoirs quite a few times. So earlier in the year, I remember Rand Water's bulk suppliers, they picked up that some of the reservoirs were actually dipping. The levels were a bit low. Now, then it was asked that the metros, Ekurhuleni, City of Johannesburg, and Tshwane at the time, they were asked to monitor the network supply. So, speaking of, and as you said, when there are problems, people then tap into the reservoirs. What are the levels of those reservoirs right now? And, you know, should we be concerned about that?
No, right across our system, the reservoirs are looking good, except for two reservoirs really that were affected by the Saturday and Sunday incidents. But the beautiful thing is that they increased, you know, at a surprising rate. Under normal circumstances, we operate them at over 80%. We are sitting at 31-25%, which is comfortable because what it means is that as water goes into the reservoir, consumers are using, but also we've got a little bit that is building the capacity. So we are not concerned. Across the network, we are happy. Reservoirs are dynamic in terms of their levels. It depends on what is happening. Now that it has rained last night, which we're excited about, now that it has rained, now that it's getting a little bit cooler, we know that consumers limit the usage. And then it gives us a good opportunity to increase the levels. The evenings as well help us to raise the levels. And during the day, because we all are active, then we drop them. So you see that sinusoidal wave in terms of the ups and downs of the reservoir levels.
Eddie Singo, thanks so much for your time and for explaining this to us. Appreciate it. And Eddie Singo is Rand Water's executive manager for the Zuikerbosch Plant, talking to us about the continuing power failures that depleted the water supply and some major areas affected in Gauteng and some health facilities as well. But as Eddie says, from their side, as Rand Water, they have now resolved the problem on their side. And if any of the higher lying areas still have any problems, then we should check with our local water entities. So that's where we're going to leave it with our SABC 2 viewers.